Now, let's look at the ankle and the foot. We're going to do subtalar and transverse tarsal movements. So what is that? All right. We're going to look at eversion. Eversion is turning the sole of the foot outward or laterally. So if we take the foot here and rotate it outward, take the ankle, the lateral part of the ankle and push it outward, that is eversion. Or if we're standing on the insides or insoles of our feet, that is considered eversion. Which is the next one, standing on the weight on the inner side of the foot. Inversion is just the opposite, turning the sole of the foot inward or medially. We're going to rotate the foot inward. That is inversion. Staying on the weight of the foot on the outside. So if we stand here, we stand on the outsides of our feet. I know you probably can't see it, but think about this. We're standing here, our feet are flat, then we push out to the sides of our feet. We pull up the inside of our foot off the ground and stand on the outsides of our feet. That is inversion. If we try to rotate, pull our knees in and try to stand on our arches, that would be eversion. Dorsiflexion, flexion movement of the ankle, resulting in the top of the foot moving toward that. So, if we look at the top of the foot is called the dorsum. So if we're in this position here, if we pull the top of the foot, the dorsum, toward us, that is considered dorsiflexion. And what's the opposite of that? The bottom of the foot is called the plantar. So if we push it away, do like a toe, pointing our toe, that is considered plantar flexion. Pronation, combination of ankle dorsiflexion, subtalar eversion, and forefoot abduction, toe out. So let's look at that. So if we look at our hands, we would do pronation, supination. So once again, if we put our foot out to the side, that's considered, we have ankle dorsiflexion, pull the top of the foot toward us, push our ankle out to the side, and forefoot abduction, that's with the toe out. Supination is just be the opposite. Try to pull the ankle in, try to flex the toe, and pull our ankle toward, the inside ankle up toward us. That is supination. Combination of ankle plantar flexion, subtalar inversion, and forefoot adduction, pulling toward the midline. Look at the radioulnar joint. We have pronation, literally rotating where the radius lies with diagonally across the ulna. It's actually, the outside of the forearm is actually going to rotate around the ulna, resulting in a palm down position. So we take our hand and rotate it that way. The radius will actually rotate over top of the ulna and our palm will go down. So if we look at the next one, supination, it's just the opposite. We're going to take our hand and point our palms up. So this is pronation, supination. Next, we're going to look at the shoulder girdle. Remember, the shoulder girdle consists of the clavicle, the scapula, and the arm. And what do we have here? We have depression and elevation of the shoulder girdle. So what we're going to do is we're going to elevate, we're going to raise the shoulder up straight up, then we're going to depress. So what we're looking at here. Superior movement of the shoulder girdle, shrugging the shoulders. We shrug up and then we shrug down, returning the shoulder blades to the normal position. So elevation, depression. Next on our list is protraction and retraction. So what we're going to do here, let me turn around here. So if we pull the shoulder blades apart, that's protraction. And then we pull them together, that is retraction. Let's say it again. Protraction away from the spine, our abduction of the scapula. Next one is retraction, pull the shoulder blades toward the spine, or adduction of the scapula. Next, we have inward, downward, and upward rotation. So let me turn around again. As I'm in this position, if I try to push my arm up, what happens to the scapula? The arm is moving at the shoulder joint, but in order for the arm to be positioned in the right place, the shoulder blade is going to rotate upward. In other words, the bottom of the spine, or the bottom of the scapula, is going to rotate this way. That's upward rotation, and then it's going to downward rotate. Because what's happening is, as you move the arm up this way, what's happening is, as it rotates through there, the shoulder blade has to move the position in the socket so the humeral head can roll, glide, and slide there like it's supposed to. So what we have here is upward rotation of the scapula, downward rotation of the scapula. So if you're doing an overhead press, that is upward rotation. If you're doing a pull down or pull up, you'll do a depression of the shoulder blade, and then what happens is, as you pull down, the shoulder blade, the angle is going to come in and come down. Upward rotation, rotary movement of the scapula with the inferior angle of the scapula moving laterally toward the outside and upward. For downward rotation, the inferior angle of the scapula is moving medially toward the middle and moving downward. Another movement of the shoulder girdle or the shoulder joint is what they call horizontal abduction and horizontal adduction. And that's nothing more than with the arms out in front of you, as we move through the transverse plane, and as we move the arms away from the midline, that's called horizontal abduction. As we move the arms together again, we're moving toward the midline, that's called horizontal adduction. We also, if you notice, this is also called horizontal extension, or if we have horizontal abduction, that's also called transverse abduction. So horizontal abduction, transverse abduction, horizontal adduction or transverse or horizontal flexion, transverse adduction, abduction, adduction, extension, flexion. So you can use it. The terms are interchangeable. It just depends, number one, what book you're reading or what you're trying to explain it to and what somebody will understand more importantly. Last part of our movements, we're going to talk about the spine. So what does the spine do? We have lateral flexion, which is side bending. That's movement of the head or trunk laterally away from the midline. So if we're standing here, if we do lateral flexion, move to the side and then back. Lateral flexion, lateral flexion, lateral extension, lateral flexion, and extension, extending back. Mostly we just call it lateral flexion to one side. That's all we call it. And the abduction of the spine. We also call it reduction, return of the spine to the anatomical position from lateral flexion. We could call it adduction of the spine. So we have lateral flexion or abduction, and reduction is adduction of the spine, returning to the normal position. So lateral flexion, abduction, and then we return. Reduction is return the spine to the normal anatomical position. Next, let's talk about physiological movements versus accessory motions. Now, we've looked at physiological movements, which is flexion, extension, abduction, adduction, and rotation. These occur by the bones moving through the planes of motion about a particular axis of rotation. Now, osteokinematic motion resulting motion of bones relative to the three cardinal planes from these physiological motions or positions. For osteokinematic motions to occur, there must be movement between the two joint articulating surfaces. Orthokinematic, we have motions between the articulating surface. So osteokinematic motion, the movement between the joint articulating surface. Orthokinematics is motion between the articulating surfaces. Now the three specific types of accessory motions. We have spin, we have roll, we have glide. If the accessory motion is prevented from occurring, then physiological motion cannot occur to any substantial degree other than that by joint compression and distraction. Here's compression. Distraction is it moving through, kind of like friction forces. Compression, distraction, moving away from each other. Due to most diarthrodial or synovial joints being composed of a concave surface articulating with a convex surface, roll and glide must occur together at some degree. So the joints in there have to roll, glide, and slide within the articulating surface in order for efficient movement to take place. Example 1, let's look at this. When a person stands up from a squatted position, let's take these two bones right here. Take the femur and the tibia. Let's look at this. Person stands from a squatted position. The femur must roll forward. It rolls forward, but it also slides backwards for it to be able to come into that position. Even when you're squatting down, it has to roll backwards, but it also has to slide forward as well too, so it can stay in contact with its articulating surface. Now, spin may occur in isolation or in a combination with roll and glide. So it rolls, it glides, and as you come up, it rolls, it glides, but at the top, it may spin medially to lock it into place. This is very common with the knee joint. So as you're squatting down, it rolls, it glides, and keeps doing that into your bottom position. And as you come back, it rolls, it glides, and slides, and at the top, it'll roll and lock into place. That's the full extension movement. That's what that is. That's roll, glide, and slide. Now, a roll or rock, a series of points of one articulating surface contact with a series of points on another articulating surface. So it'll roll back and forth a little bit. It rolls and glides, but it also will rock back and forth a little bit. Remember we talked about that knee joint being in a sagittal plane, but it only does flexion and extension. It's supposed to be a hinge joint, but it will also too, it could flex and extend, but it'll also roll a little bit and also laterally move from side to side as well too. That's that rock. The glide is a specific point of one articulating surface coming into contact with a series of points of another. So if you look at that, as it rolls back, it's also going to slide so it can keep all points in contact with that articulating surface. Now spin is a single point on one articulating surface, rotates about another single point there. So we talked about that. As we come back up, it rolls back, rolls forward, glides, then it gets to the top and it spins and locks into place. Motion occurs around some stationary and longitudinal mechanical axis in either the clockwise or counterclockwise direction, depending on the joint. So let's take a look at this. Watch it for a little bit. If it comes up, it rolls, it slides, just like we talked about before. But you can see, as it does that, it will roll, it will glide, and then it spins and locks it into place. That's what the knee does at the top. When you're squatting down, it actually will unlock so it can roll and glide and slide in there. As it comes back up, it'll roll, glide, and slide into the top. It'll lock back into place. Now, the next part is movement icons. Now, we don't have to go through all this because these are in your book, but there are a number of movement icons that you can look for: the shoulder girdle, the glenohumeral joint, the elbow, the radial ulnar joints, the elbow, radial ulnar joints again, the thumbs, all the hand joints. So there are a number of at the hip, at the knee, at the ankle, at the toes, at the cervical spine, at the lumbar spine. So what I want you to do is go through each one of these icons and see if you can duplicate these particular type of movements. Because the more you understand how the planes of motion work, the axis of rotation, how the bones and joints are all put together and how they move efficiently, you'll be able to understand when you're trying to teach somebody some type of movement pattern or exercise, you'll know how the body is supposed to position itself through the joint's entire range of motion. Whether it's a single joint movement or a multi-joint, multi-planar movement, you will understand how everything's supposed to be throughout that full range of motion. Last part are just websites. These are all in your book as well too. So if you can look at that, get an idea. If you have any questions, you can go to these websites and get some more information if you're confused about what we just talked about motion and joint structures and everything. So there are quite a bit in here. Number of different websites. Like I said, they're in your chapter. So take a good look at these. If you got any questions, go through here. Now, once you've done this, I want you to review everything, take the quiz, and I'll see you next learning module.